Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 212 on a Monday night, March the 20th. A couple nights before Vanderbilt and UAB at Memorial Gym for one final time. We will preview that. We'll give a little tease to someone's hype speech. Not sure who it'll be, but we'll stay tuned for that. But we are powered by Halaco Finewood Floors, family owned and operated for more than 2 decades. Halaco Finewood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Halaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue in Berry Hill, or give them a call at 615-356-0303 or log on to alacofinewoodfloors.com. Gentlemen, Will Byrum, Trevor Hulan, all present, and we've got a lot to get to. We've got a VandyBoys sweep to recap of the reigning national champs, Ole Miss Rebels. It was a fun weekend over there at the Hawk. Basketball team beats Michigan 66-65 in the NIT. It was Jerry Stackhouse over Juwan Howard. We'll talk about Stackhouse throwing the full court trap press that Juwan Howard and the Wolverines just could not solve. We'll get to some fan comments and questions, and we'll talk about UAB coming up at Memorial on Wednesday night. Whiteout. So guys, we got a lot to get to. Will, I know you weren't at the game Saturday, 11 a.m. tip. I was surprised by the crowd, but I'm happy to hear you and your dad are headed to the game Wednesday, as I hope, and I think most Vanderbilt fans will be.
Yeah, I know you and Trevor, Billy, were both at the game, so I get to have a little bit different perspective.
So I actually wasn't at the Michigan game.
You weren't? Okay,
No,
so I was getting shade thrown at me by people because I was publicly known that I wasn't at the game. But I will be there against UAB for the final game in Memorial this season. But the crowd on TV looked great. I don't know what the final attendance numbers were. I think they were 8,000 or 9,000.
A little over 8,000, not 800.
Yeah, officially for the Michigan game. But on TV, there have been crowds that have been 13,000, 12,000 that did not look that good on television. Because of that 9,000, Trevor, you'll have more information on this because you were actually inside of Memorial. You were inside of Memorial in 2L this time around, Trevor. Is that right?
Oh, 2L, dude, just with my people, with the goons.
But so you can elaborate on this from TV. It seemed like most of those fans were Vanderbilt fans that made up that 8,000 to 9,000. And there were some Michigan fans. I mean, obviously there were Michigan fans there. It's a large program. You could hear them a little bit on TV, but it seemed like a majority of the noise being made inside of Memorial Gym was from fans in black and gold, not blue and maize or whatever the hell Michigan's colors are. Yeah. So yeah, I got it right actually. Wow, look at that. But like the Auburn game, I think that was a sellout or close to
a different story. Yeah,
exactly. That was a great environment as well, but in different ways. So there's almost something a little bit impressive about what I was able to see on TV, which is a Vanderbilt environment that's rocking.
It's a great point, Will, and I don't think we talk about it enough. And I do want to get to you, Trevor. I know you were there, so you'll have a great perspective of it. But Will hits on something that this will be a great Dog Days discussion of Vanderbilt dominating home crowds, and because it's been rare. I mean, let's face it, that's a rare occurrence at Vanderbilt. But when it does happen, like Will said, it's something special. That this program's going somewhere, and there's excitement, there's buzz, there's so many crowd shots of young kids too, like getting excited. So that's what we need, Trevor. That's what Vanderbilt needs, and it feels like they're getting it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Shout out to the fans. I was there on Saturday. I'm known to get to sporting events very early. This one, I actually didn't get to the basketball game in my seat till like right before tip-off because traffic on West End turning onto 25th Avenue, Perry Wallace, was a nightmare. So I actually had to go around to come back the back end and then walk a little ways to get to the gym. So I got there a lot later than I normally like to. The crowd was a little bit late arriving, but I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that it was 11 a.m. and that West End was legitimately a nightmare, at least like close to the ball game. But the crowd was awesome, man. And like you guys said, I totally agree, man. Shout out to the fans. Students were on spring break, but I don't think you would have noticed.
Wouldn't have noticed, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of fans that are students that were actually in the crowd who I'm guessing weren't on or were on spring break but just couldn't travel, whether it be they're actually from the Middle Tennessee area or is just too far out to make a week of travel. But yo, shout out to those guys. Like 2L was legitimately jam-packed. Like, this is not a joke. We were like butt to butt, like elbow to elbow on like our row. And Alan Richardson, who's a big fan of the pod, big Vandy fan on Twitter, he was right behind me with his folks. He was awesome. He was bringing the noise. But yeah, I totally agree. It wasn't a family atmosphere, but I noticed there were a lot of like kids there. Like,
I feel like every crowd shot was like this, group of like 15-year-old
dude, it was
kids.
awesome, man. Like, to my right was a dad and his son, and in front of me were some guys who are familiar with the pod and familiar with this on Twitter. I didn't grab their name. I wish I did. But two dudes were there. One with, I'm assuming, his son, who we actually were chit-chatting. His son was maybe 3, 4, 5. I'm really bad with telling kids' ages, but we were talking, and his kid was actually very distraught that Miles Studi left. He was his favorite player, and I made a joke about, because Colin Smith was raining down threes, and I just got up and like yelled. I was like, "Yeah, Miles, you weren't getting your spot back." And the guy was like, we were chit-chatting. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, this guy, like pointing to his little son, was like distraught. He said whenever he broke the news that he was transferring, he cried and everything. And I was like, dude, man, I'm sorry. I take back what I said. But I was like, shout out to this little guy. But man, dude, the crowd was awesome. 2L was packed. L was packed. I mean, even like along the court. So like A through E, and then the second deck was awesome. There were some Michigan fans there. It was brought to my attention that apparently Michigan does have a really large alumni base in Nashville.
Who doesn't nowadays? God.
Exactly. I mean, Nashville is the it city in America. So a lot of people are moving here, whether it be for healthcare reasons or whatnot. But they were mainly behind the Michigan bench, but there still wasn't a lot of them. Like like you saw them, but it like, I mean, they weren't a ton.
It wasn't like Auburn.
With Michigan's roster this year and the talent they know is probably not going to be back next year.
Yeah,
my expectation was not seeing a lot of Michigan fans because unlike Vanderbilt fans that can talk themselves into with this run again, this team will be improved next season. Almost every one of these guys is coming back. That is not the case for Juwan Howard in Michigan. So I think that may have had an impact on them playing in
that Michigan program not trending in the right direction. And I think, Stackhouse finding a way to win that game was bigger than a lot of Vandy fans think, I think, down the stretch, because you lose this. It's like, man, what an opportunity. I don't know about wasted, but, you could say that because this team is the betting favorite to win the NIT right now. I don't know. I think that was released after that was switched to they became the favorite after beating Michigan, which is no surprise. I mean, some of the teams left, like Utah Valley, Cincinnati. There's some nobodies left. So it'll be interesting. The UAB game will be different. I think the UAB fans from Birmingham up I-65 might make that trip. That'll be a fun atmosphere Wednesday night. We'll get into all that. We've got a lot to get to. Before we do, though, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @door_report and Instagram door.report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, let's get to the breaking news. All right, guys, before we get into anything, shout out to Trevor, or should I say Hack Squat Jim Duggan, on being named the best Twitter account to follow during basketball games this season by Big Game Boomer. I looked at that earlier today, and Big Game Boomer, by the way, very respected. I don't know what you'd call him, just Twitter account. I mean, he's
but
everywhere.
It's like mixed with serious. It's like the rankings are serious with targeted things that are not serious. Trevor, that was a serious award that you won.
There's a respect factor.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a respect factor with Big Game Boomer, and Trevor That's an honor, man. I mean,
It
legitimately,
is.
like I'm not like I'm not even kidding. That's pretty cool.
It was
Did he
pretty
did he have
wild.
to DM? Did he have to DM you? How did that like
No, so I recently, to give you the full story, I recently got added into a Twitter group DM with Big Game Boomer. So I'm in there. It's like, but I haven't spoken to him. Like I'm not super active in there. But he's in there, and it actually was one Wednesday night. I just checked my Twitter and it said like Big Game Boomer added me to like a group chat on Twitter, and I was like, what the heck is this? And he's like, we need a Vandy fan in here. And so I haven't spoken to him directly or anything like that. Like I've maybe sent like 2 or 3 messages in there in like the week I've been there. But yeah, someone just tagged me on the tweet and was like, yo, check this out. So it's honestly it
how does it feel?
it honestly feels kind of cool. I'm trying not to let
Validation.
it go to my head, but yo, shout out to everybody on Vandy Twitter. This is not just a me thing. This is the us thing. This is for the common Vandy fan. This is for everybody who interacts with me, Billy, Will on Twitter, with the Door Report. So yeah, so
It's funny.
it is actually quite an honor. It was very funny, but I was like, oh, this is actually like kind of cool.
That's one of those things that I saw, and I saw your name on that list, and I think I got more excited than if I would have seen my own name on that list. I was like, no way, it's Hack Squad. Yes, absolutely.
It took me a while to like be like, oh, like this is not like this isn't a fake list. Like this is like me on there. It was wild.
That's pretty cool.
It's so funny because I'm 26. I've had my Twitter since 2010. So I was like, I mean, I'm terrible at math, but I was like an 11, 12, 13-year-old kid just tweeting about Vanderbilt athletics into the ether for
Back in the Wild West.
Decades. Like I shouldn't, like it's crazy. I can't blame my parents. Nobody had any idea what Twitter was back in 2010. So
You probably shouldn't have access anymore, but here we are.
no, I'm a child of the internet. So it's been a lot of tweeting. It's been a lot of just shouting things into the ether that nobody sees. But man, I think it actually is kind of cool that like we do have a growing fan base of Vanderbilt fans on the internet, because for the longest time, my first like real like interaction with anybody who is Vandy fans on Twitter was Anchor of Gold. They were like one of the first accounts. So those dudes at SB Nation, Anchor of Gold, that was like my first ever like, oh, like there's Vandy fans on the internet. And for the real old ones, there was a guy named Vandy Fan Simon. He's not active anymore, but he was like he was a real one. So yeah, so it's cool to see that like there's actually other Vandy fans out there, and we've got to meet like a lot of them in person too. So that's honestly like really, really cool. And it's a lot of younger dudes too, man. Like for the longest time, like the Vandy fan base, like if you went to a basketball or a football game, was just people who've been going for 30, 40 years, and like dudes our age like didn't give 2 rips about Vanderbilt athletics. So it is actually pretty cool to see that is slowly but surely changing. So it is, yeah, it was very surreal whenever I saw the tweet.
It's funny. He's jumped into our spaces, a couple of our spaces, and it's always been like I'll see him in there for like a couple minutes and then he'll leave. So I knew he had kind of been involved with us a little bit. But congrats to Trevor. I don't even know what that award, best Twitter account to follow during basketball season for Vanderbilt fans. So go follow Hack Squad Jim Duggan if you haven't already. Guys, let's get to some VandyBoys talk. We've got a lot to get to here. I mean, we previewed this series saying this is going to be tough. Ole Miss is one of the best hitting teams in the country. They got the bats rolling. But, Will, you kept saying they haven't played anybody. And you were right. That showed against this Vanderbilt pitching staff. They haven't faced a pitching staff like Vanderbilt. The VandyBoys end up run ruling Ole Miss on Thursday 12-2, which was weird because I was there. And it was almost, I was like, what's going on? And the new run rule has been enacted for SEC play. So 10 after 7, I think it is, Trev. Yes. 10 after 7, Vanderbilt run ruled them. And then Friday, 8-0, Saturday, 7-2, just dominant. First sweep over Ole Miss since 2013. Outscored the Rebs 27-4. I mean, just utter domination. Jack Bolger, I thought, offensively, was a big piece, and he's been a big piece for a while. He got dropped into the 4 spot this week. He went 8 of 19, 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 9 RBIs. Bolger has found a role. And I think he's happy about that. The team's happy about that. Fans are happy about that. It'll be interesting to see how that catcher situation shapes out with Espinal and Bolger. Bolger at the plate is playing a lot better now that he's into that 4 spot. So that might be the situation there. But guys, Hunter Owen, SEC co-pitcher of the week, struck out a career high 11 on Friday night. He only allowed 2 hits. He's the first Vandy pitcher to throw a 9-inning complete game shutout since Jack Leiter in 2021. So this felt like the old VandyBoys, guys. I mean, this felt like a little bit like that 2019 team where they're so dominant. You're just sort of sitting back, relaxing, and watching them go at it. Just dominate the other team. Well, Trevor and I were there Thursday and Friday. I don't know how much of you got to watch, but domination. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. So like I said, for this exact reason, I just like that there's an example right in front of our faces so that I don't just sound like I'm lazy and don't want to watch every pitch of early season college baseball. All of this stuff more than any other sport, and especially just because of the prestige of the program that Vanderbilt has, and they kind of have this room for error built in early in the year that other teams that haven't won 2 national championships in the last decade just don't have. So that's nice to appreciate, but all of this stuff about Vanderbilt's issues, and now it's all hunky-dory because Vanderbilt just absolutely dominated the number 3 team in the country that had been rolling through every other team they had played and was sitting at 14-1. Well, turns out they hadn't played anyone, and there is a massive difference in baseball in playing consistently good opponents and playing 1 or 2 one-off games against opponents, because unlike basketball, baseball is not a pure tournament sport. Okay. It is a series sport. And so early in the year, all this hype that's being given to these teams with 1 loss or 2 losses, or they've just been rolling through Delaware State. It's just even more than basketball. I just can't even engage with it because people are so ignorant and stupid and just becoming fans of baseball that they think it is the exact same as basketball. Or even, I won't even say football, but basketball, or these non-conference beginning of the year games actually do anything to where you're going to kind of rank in the tiers within the SEC as a conference. There is nothing comparable to the SEC as a conference. No. There's nothing even in the same, they're almost not even playing the same sport as the SEC. You have like 7 of the top 10 teams in all of college baseball. So all this stuff at the beginning of the year, we'll see. We'll see in a couple months when, the teams finalize their rotations, the lineups are set, the managers know what they've got across the board. Then you'll hear a lot more breakdown and analysis from me. I like the Hawk. I love the Hawk. I love going out there, sitting there watching a game and being a bleacher creature. I'm not saying anything against that, but if I don't have a ticket, I'm box score watching. I'm going to be honest. I'll turn it on if the game's getting close late, and then I will get very into it in the next couple weeks here as Vanderbilt basketball season closes down. But Trevor, Billy, you guys always inform me about what's going on with baseball. So Trevor, go ahead and start informing Will Byrum as he is going to continue to get more into Tim Corbin in this baseball.
And Trev's the recap guy. He's giving us all these recaps.
I mean, I tweeted out, it's so funny because even me, there was legitimate worry about how the bats were going into conference play, because in non-conference play, not good. Their batting average was not great. Even their on-base percentage wasn't awesome. Of course, the pitching was always there. I put in the recap that, which I'll probably need to pull up the official numbers, but Vanderbilt starting pitching, some of the best in the SEC. I think they had.
I've got them. I've got them here. Their pitching staff now ranks 3rd nationally in hits allowed per 9 at 6, 8th in WHIP at 1.09, 12th in ERA at 3.09, and 20th in strikeouts per 9 at 11.
Exactly. There we go. So the pitching was always there. One thing that really impressed me this weekend is there has been a lot of discourse around the top of the lineup for Vanderbilt, particularly with Enrique Bradfield. His batting average isn't too great. I've said I stand by this. I don't really care about his batting average as long as he gets on base. I don't care if he gets on base via a walk, hit by pitch. I don't care. I don't care what he does. I do have a little bit of an issue with him bunting with nobody on. That is another discussion for another time. But for EBJ, just get him on base because that's his bread and butter. He's going to create a lot of confusion on the base paths, especially with a pitch clock to where pitchers now don't really have the a lot of time to sort of focus on the hitter as well as Enrique Bradfield if he's on first or even if he's on second or third. So that just sort of compounds the issue whenever you get him on base. But man, Vanderbilt had a lot of production from the bottom of the lineup this weekend in particular. Matthew Polk, 3 for 4 on Friday. RJ Schreck had a wonderful weekend. He is looking like he's going to be an all SEC kind of guy with his bat. He looks as good as advertised. He looks awesome. But then you have guys like Parker Nolan. Friday, Parker Nolan had 3 RBIs. Jonathan Vastine playing shortstop. Bats bottom of the lineup. Friday went 3 for 4.
Which is scary, by the way, that the fact that he's at the bottom of that lineup.
And I think Vastine is batting like 334, something like that. So man, like talk about just danger all through the lineup. They had a lot of loud at bats. I believe it was Saturday tied their record or season record so far. I forget if it was, I believe it was Saturday, 4 home runs in a game. I mean,
yeah.
They're doing really well, and they're going up against great pitching. Ole Miss has a really, really nice starting rotation. Vanderbilt was able to get into the bullpen Thursday, Friday, which caused them problems on Sunday. Vanderbilt didn't really get the bats going until the 4th inning was whenever they scored their first couple runs. So, yeah, man, I mean, just a wonderful weekend for Vanderbilt baseball, a wonderful weekend for the pitching, for the ABs. I mean, and even defensive plays, man. Matthew Polk had probably the play of the weekend on Thursday with that diving catch. I mean, Davis Diaz continues to show that he's got a stellar glove at third. Jonathan Vastine, that last out of the game, I believe on Saturday. It was Saturday. The double play to where he caught a liner right between the eyes and then dove and got the tag out at second. So, man, I mean, this team is just awesome. And so even when you said, Billy, particularly with Jack Bulger, is he's obviously not the defensive catcher that Alan Espinal is. Nobody's going to question that. But, man, whenever you have a catcher like that who can produce on offense, and even if he's not catching in a game and you do have Alan Espinal behind the dish, you can put him at DH and then maybe give Maldonado, who is also off to a stellar start at DH. Yeah. Maybe if you want to give him a little bit of looks somewhere along the infield, probably not the shortstop position, but probably second or third base if you want to give Diaz a break every now and again. But, man, those guys are awesome. I think my favorite player right now is RJ Austin. I love that guy. Tim Corbin keeps calling him a 70s type player. I obviously was not alive during the 70s, but being a big Cincinnati Reds fan, he reminds me a lot of Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan, small second base guy, but just like Joe Morgan, man, he has a great bat.
He does.
He's only going to get better, guys, as he sees more ABs, as he sees his higher competition. He's only going to get better. So it's almost like Vanderbilt goofed around, and then they looked at the schedule, they're like, oh, the number 3 teams in the nation is coming. They're like, yeah, I guess we'll start playing baseball now. Like that's sort of what it feels like, which is really fun.
That is what it felt like because you knew you hadn't seen what this team was capable of so far. You saw them in Arlington, and they won a couple there and looked good, but it's almost like there was a missing piece. We were still missing something, that domination that domination that the VandyBoys are expected to have, and they did that this weekend. I mean, they lived in Memorial Gym. I can't tell you how many balls hit Memorial Gym over the monster.
Matthew Polk, he had a home run that is probably still sitting on Memorial Gym.
Parker Nolan, his classic opposite field home run. That was on Thursday to get things going, and that really lit a fuse under Vandy. I know I talked about Hunter Owen, but Carter Holton and Devin Futrell pitched just as well, just as good as Owen. Carter gave up 2 runs in 6 innings on Thursday. Devin Futrell gave up 2 runs in 5 innings on Saturday. Only 3 pitchers came out of the Vandy bullpen all series. Bryce Cunningham, Sam Leboki, and Nick Maldonado. None of them gave up a single run. I mean, that's insane. So Vandy pitching is still Vandy pitching. This isn't really anything new for Vandy fans, but the hitting, you could say, is something new. This level of dominant hitting offensively and this level of firepower is new within the last 2.5 years, because you really haven't seen a team, and we may not ever see another offense like that 2019 offense, but the fact that you're starting to see a little bit more firepower and aggressiveness from Corbin and this offense and these bats is a phenomenal sign. And that's why D1 Baseball has Vandy at number 4 now. Baseball America has them at number 5. So they're moving up. And I think this is just Vandy saying, we're not going anywhere. You know, we're not going anywhere. And the demise of Vandy's bats offensively was greatly exaggerated. I mean, so great win over Ole Miss. Vanderbilt will return to First Horizon Park to face Lipscomb at 6:00 Tuesday night. Is the second of 2 all-for-lose showdown games. They beat Belmont last Tuesday. So go out to First Horizon Park to see Vanderbilt face Lipscomb. We'll get more into baseball. I know, just dominant series win. But the beef of this episode is going to be basketball, because we are still in the thick of basketball season. And let's talk about that Michigan game, guys. Vanderbilt.
Sorry,
No,
I'll
ahead.
say one more thing about baseball too, particularly with the pitching. It is only going to get better because your stud freshman Andrew Dekanich is still struggling with the hamstring.
Yeah,
he's gonna come back, and guys, this kid is a stud. Sorry, it's only gonna get better for the Vandy boys.
Yeah.
So
I think Corbin said he's day to day.
Week to week.
Week to week. Okay. Yeah.
Week
so
to week,
Dukanich, he's week to week. And, he's a guy that Vandy's lucky enough to have enough guys around him on this staff to where they're not hurt. I mean, they're used to having pitching depth. I will say this, though, Trevor, this is one of the better seasons for pitching depth. I know we say this a lot with Vanderbilt, but the depth is unbelievable. I mean,
whenever Patrick Riley is a midweek guy, I mean,
they've got.
If Patrick Riley can get his juices going, I know it's taking him a little while, but God, if he can get his juices going, I mean.
And there's a new energy, I think, with this team as well, offensively. I know Mike Baxter has gotten a lot of criticism over the last couple of years, but this sort of proves the fact that he's a phenomenal baseball coach. He's won at a high level. He's played at the professional level, and he's doing okay with those Vandy bats. So again, we'll keep talking Vandy baseball throughout the season, especially in SEC play. They'll head to Starkville next weekend, and Mississippi State just got
the piss out of them.
Yeah, Mississippi State just got swept by, I forgot who they played.
Kentucky.
It was Kentucky. Yeah, they got swept in Lexington. Another team that got swept was Tennessee at Missouri. Tennessee gets swept. Tony Vitello swept by the team that sort of grew him into the coach he is today. So I thought that was
State has lost 13 straight SEC games.
Crazy.
Guys, those guys suck. We hate those guys. They want to moan and complain about our scholarships. Well, we're going to go to your stadium, your rinky-dink little stadium, where it's a great atmosphere. We park our pickup trucks in the outfield. I don't care. You're about to get the piss beat out of you this weekend.
They'll be fired up down there in Starkville. But if they if they get swept this series, there may not be too many pickup trucks pulling up back there in left field anymore for Mississippi State down in
Also,
Starkville.
too, people wanted to be like, oh, Christian Little left Vanderbilt to go to LSU. He's like, this is the best pitching staff I've ever had. Yeah, and he got shellacked this weekend. So, yeah, I was a Christian Little truther until you want to throw shade at the Vanderbilt pitching staff. So, yeah, you're public enemy number 1 now, bud.
Imagine transferring from Vanderbilt and then calling another program the best pitching staff you've ever pitched on. I mean, I know LSU, he might be right, but still, to even say that, like that's pretty foolish. So we'll talk more baseball, guys, but let's get into basketball. Vandy beats Michigan 66-65 from a raucous Memorial. I mean, that place was on fire. a little over 8,000 announced attendance. Tyrin Lawrence scored the game-winning layup with 10 seconds left. Wild finish. And we'll get into this, guys, but Vandy ended the game on a 9-0 run in the final 46 seconds. Stackhouse threw together a full-court trap that Michigan just couldn't solve. I mean, I don't know what – they turned the ball over 3 straight times in the game. Tyrin Lawrence just – it's insane to see him, thinking about him last year compared to now. I mean, he's as dominant a player that Vandy's seen at the guard position in a long time. 24 points, 9 rebounds. He was 10 of 17 from the field, 4 of 4 from the free throw line, back-to-back 20-plus point performances against Yale and Michigan. And, guys, he's put up 22, 18, 18, 25, and 25 in his last 5 games. So Tyrin Lawrence has been just as important as anybody else, just as important as Ezra Manjon. Manjon had 17. He was 6 of 10 from the field. He's starting to shoot a lot better, guys. I mean, he really is. And that's not – I don't think it's a fluke either. Like, we're seeing guys getting better under Coach Stackhouse, and you saw it. You've seen it so far in this NIT with guys like Ezra Manjon, Colin Smith. He had 11 points, 3 of 7 from the three-point line. He had a great drive late in the game, I thought, with a little hesitation. I mean, you're seeing guys' games develop in front of you, and that's why it's cool to make a postseason run like this, even if it is the NIT. So, Will, that's the story to me. We're seeing these guys develop right in front of our eyes, and they're playing at home. They're gaining even more confidence. It's just, I mean, you're starting to see the program grow right in front of your eyes. I mean, in your home gym, beating great teams. Yale was a good team. I mean, I know we said they didn't deserve to be on the floor of Vanderbilt, but they came this close to beating Princeton in their conference tournament in the Ivy League. So, and they could be playing in the NCAA tournament right now. Michigan, a team who played in the Big Ten, one of the best conferences in America. So Yale and Michigan, they're not chopped liver. Now, Vanderbilt's better than them, and they're better than probably every team in this field. But it's nice to see, guys, some dominant efforts from players that, we had talked about before the season, saying this is what we expect from these guys.
Yeah, okay. I have to have this take. That was an incredible performance from Vanderbilt. I just want to get it out there early and just say the NIT can be a positive thing. It can build positive momentum into the next season. But I just want us to have the understanding and knowledge that if Vanderbilt had come out laid an egg versus Yale and gotten beaten by 15 on their home court, we probably would have come on here and say, yeah, who cares? So I just want to have that understanding of this is a postseason tournament that's not meaningless. It's certainly not meaningless, but it's not necessarily meaningful. And so that's one little context. There's not really a point I'm trying to make with that. It's just we are being positive because they have won and came back and had that incredible, like you mentioned, Billy, last 46 seconds, last minute of that game, that Michigan never shot free throws. Vanderbilt never had to foul and send Michigan to the line and hope for a miss. They forced Michigan into turnovers and bad passes and horrible decisions. And Juwan Howard had that team looking like deer in the headlights.
They were lost.
I mean, against Stack's press, and Stack was a step ahead of Juwan Howard on every single play inside that last minute. My favorite thing, my favorite tweet that I had the whole game was after Vanderbilt had won, I said, Jerry Stackhouse coached circles around Juwan Howard. And that got a few replies from a few different people. But there. Yeah, I didn't expect that to be as active as it was. But there was a Michigan fan that said, then why wasn't he winning until the end of the game? And that was the only one I responded to or quoted from the replies. And I said, because he coached circles around him the last minute of the game. That was why Vanderbilt won. They were down 9. They came out in that full court press. Michigan called timeouts, and every single time that there was a break in the game, both coaches had a chance to draw up a press versus a press break. Every single set that Juwan Howard came out of, Stack was a step ahead and had a different type of press set up. Or a different moment that actual trap would happen. It was the one pass specifically that Michigan threw the ball out of bounds. They actually got the ball across half court relatively easily, and you could see it in what Michigan did, that they kind of loosened up or getting into their offense. And the moment that Michigan's point guard dribbled the ball across the half court line, Vanderbilt trapped. And you could just see that they had no idea what to do and were unprepared for that. And that was when, in my head, I said Jerry is won. I mean, won this game or definitely assisted in winning this game for this team. He's put them in situations to be successful. So we've been very critical. I've been very critical of Jerry, but I do like always to give props when I clearly see coaching successes. Now that I've given the positive, just draw it back to the beginning of what I just stated. And just remember, this is the NIT, back to the middle. This is the NIT, okay? And if Vanderbilt would have just had the normal end of game run, it would not have invalidated all of the points that we had. We would probably be having a basketball season recap relatively stating the same points. So it's the NIT. I'm excited for next season. But also just keep in mind, you mentioned Colin Smith lighting it up at the beginning of this episode, but Malik Dia, Colin Smith, and Lee Dort are all true freshmen. And the comment on ESPN, they said Vanderbilt has 2 posts down low in Malik Dia and Lee Dort that don't look like true freshmen in their body types. So giving those guys another offseason to develop, Paul Lewis, hopefully Noah Shelby, that's what I'm excited about. So it's not necessarily winning the NIT. That's more of like another stepping stone in this team and saying eventually this type of success should happen in the big dance, the tournament that matters. So I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but I do just want to say that we would be brushing off a big failure in the NIT and saying it's hard to focus on a tournament when you were focused on the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
But now that we've gotten out of the way, Trevor, Billy, what were your main takeaways? Did Jerry Stackhouse coach circles around Juwan Howard?
I
got some pushback. So. I got some pushback on it, more than I expected.
I think the big thing that resonated with me, and you brought up the press in that last 56 seconds of the game. I think sort of whenever the tide started to change for me, and not just for me, I think it was super evident in the game. And whenever you guys tweeted out questions or comments, my dad brought up the same thing. I think the biggest moment of the game was Jerry Stackhouse putting Jordan Wright on Hunter Dickinson. That, in my opinion, that completely changed the game. QMB was giving his all, but man, Dickinson was eating his lunch. Hunter Dickinson, I think he finished with 21 points, 11 rebounds, had a double-double. Yep. His mid-range game, I mean, QMB really couldn't stop it. And then decided to put a smaller Jordan Wright on him, and Jordan locked him up. If Jerry doesn't make the decision to go small and put Jordan on Hunter Dickinson, Vandy doesn't win that game. So, I mean, that I totally agree. Nobody in that arena would have thought to put Jordan Wright on Hunter Dickinson. I agree. Jerry outcoached Juwan Howard. And that was the big moment for me is Jordan had, and not just Saturday, but even against Yale, had really, really off nights offensively. Saturday, he only scored 6 points. He had 4 assists, 3 rebounds. But man, whenever you put him on Dickinson, he locked him up. There's no other way to say it. He made Hunter Dickinson completely inefficient and completely took him away from the ball game. And so I think my big takeaway from that game is Jordan Wright and Jerry's decision to do that. I think if Jordan doesn't do that and doesn't have the defensive performance that he did, Vanderbilt doesn't win that game. So he might not show up in the box score. He didn't score a lot of points. He actually was really, really cold from 3 offensively. But man, my MVP for that game is probably Jordan Wright, because if he doesn't lock down Dickinson, Vandy doesn't win.
No, and we've said that all year, guys. Like, I feel like after every episode, I'll come on here and talk about Jordan Wright's impact on the game. And that's what he did against Michigan. He's the Swiss Army knife for Jerry Stackhouse. Say, hey, Jordan, we need you to back down this smaller guard and get us a bucket. Hey, Jordan, go take on Hunter Dickinson, one of the better post players in the country, and win us this game. That one, I agree, Trev. That won the game. That decision right there, because Dickinson was dominant all the way through, and then Jordan Wright goes on Dickinson. It's like he doesn't know what to do. Vanderbilt started trapping him more. and they were more creative. They were more aggressive. So I think number one, Stackhouse knows his team very well. He knows where to put guys. He's putting his players in positions to succeed. Like you said, Will, I thought that was a great point. And as a coach, when you know your team and when you're able to sort of make quicker decisions, it's almost like in the last couple of years, we haven't seen quick decisions. From Stackhouse and the entire coaching staff, but now it's like, okay, they have full confidence in anybody to throw on the floor, whether it's Paul Lewis, whether it's, I know there's young guys that they may not want to play as much, but now they get that opportunity to say, hey, Paul, we trust you to go out there, hit big shots. We've seen him do that before. Malik Dia, he's done it before. Maybe not as of late, but we've seen it. Even Lee Dort. So I just think the development factor with this coaching staff and these players, especially young players, has been huge. And Will, Colin Smith is a guy that I think before the season, we had high expectations for. I remember you saying Colin Smith is a guy that, I expect to be the most college-ready guy. And I think we all agreed on that. Yes, it might have been slower developing, but that's most freshmen. That's most freshmen at the college level. This Colin Smith guy, the guy we've seen in the NIT, dangerous player. And I think it reminds me of a little bit of Stack's game a little bit. You throw on some Stack highlights, whether it's at UNC or in the NBA. I think Stack likes that about Colin Smith. And so that's what intrigues me, the younger development of a guy like Colin Smith. And now you get recruiting momentum. Guys see that. They're like, okay, Stack can do that to me as well. So I think that's what stands out to me the most.
Yeah. And I do want to backtrack. I'm not trying to dismiss what you just said. I think Stack has done a great job of developing these young guys, especially Colin Smith and Paul Lewis, who I don't even think we discussed before the season, to be honest, as part of this young group. And he's probably been the second largest contributor, some of that because of Lee Dort's injury. But Paul Lewis only played 4 minutes in that game. He had 3 points, but that 3 points was a big 3 points. I specifically remember that just being a big momentum bucket.
He's a big shot maker.
So, Trevor, you gave your MVP award to Jordan Wright. I think we've given Jordan Wright a lot of credit on this podcast. I think we've done a good job of spreading it around proportionately. The one guy that I don't think we have shined enough light on, just because he's been so good since he was benched in that Alabama 57-point loss, is Tyrin Lawrence. He has been everybody. What's the reason this team is winning? At one point, it's been Ezra Mignon, number 3 or number 2, Liam Robbins mixed in there, but obviously that's not why they were winning, because he's been out with injury and they've continued to play like this. It's Tyrin Lawrence. I mean, he is a get a bucket type of guy. Anytime that Vanderbilt looked like they were going to be out of that game, or Michigan was going to pull away and get to a lead in a point in the game that almost felt like Vanderbilt was out of the game, Tyrin Lawrence would get a bucket, would finish one of those drives, and he does it so casually.
I know.
He doesn't celebrate.
It's like he's not even making an effort to
he's
make it.
always the leading scorer almost, and it's always a quiet 20. In that run you named off, I don't remember what you said he had individually in each of the last 5 games, but those
22,
numbers,
18, 25, and 25.
Every single one of those has been a quiet 18
Yeah.
or a quiet
Other than
25.
maybe one of them. I think it was the Yale game. Yeah, but it's still
they're all key buckets, but they're not like when Trey Thomas hits a shot, it's like you remember it.
There's no wow factor. Yeah.
It's Tyrin Lawrence does these amazing things. He had an incredible dunk in transition, and it's like you appreciate it, but it's almost it just goes into the bank of Tyrin Lawrence highlights. Anybody else would do that at what he does 3, 4, 5 times a game, and the Vanderbilt social media team would be tweeting 7 video angles of it. And they do a good job of like expressing how good Tyrin is, posting his highlights. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he does it so much. He'll make these difficult finishes at tough angles over the center late in the shot clock. And you're like, that was what Scottie Pippen Jr. did last year. And that was one thing we talked about with this team. Who is the get a bucket guy? It's usually not your center. So you need a guard, somebody that plays the 1 through 4 that can just go one-on-one with who's guarding them, and no one can guard them. That has clearly become Tyrin Lawrence. I think we thought it might be Jordan Wright going into the year. Right now, it's number 1 Tyrin Lawrence, and something I don't think any of us expected. Number 2 is Ezra Mignon. I mean, his offensive game has just been different. If you would have told me beginning of the season that Ezra Mignon was putting up 17 points and was the team's second leading scorer, I wouldn't have believed you, because even at his max potential in my head, I thought he was a distributor, defender, quick passer. But man, he has turned into a guy that defenses have to game plan for in this Vanderbilt offense. And we talked about it when things were going bad, but that little Ezra jumper he's beginning to develop, that was not there. And teams leave him alone once. You've seen it. They'll leave him alone. He's dialed it up, fired up that shot and hit it. The rest of the game, they're not leaving him alone from three. And he's almost done it consistently enough over a long enough stretch of time. I mean, this could be going into next year a completely different Ezra Mignon than we saw a majority of this season. Not necessarily he's going to have the offseason to work on that jumper and whatever, but how teams are going to have to defend him is going to let him get to the basket in a way that we didn't see a majority of this year. So Tyrin is number one, but Ezra offensively also, those two guys have been the reason for this run.
Yeah, and I don't even think with Ezra, I don't even think he has to hit, I don't think he has to hit a great percentage from three, and we've talked about that. If he can hit, and he started to hit that free throw line floater / jump shot where he has hit that. I mean, that's why you saw his field goal from the field. He was 6 of 10 from the field. I mean, that's a lot. Most of those are tough finishes in the lane, but a few of those guys were that sort of that long floater where, he'll turn it into a floater sometimes, but he'll also just pull up on you and rise up seemingly 6 feet in the air, and he's able to get that shot off.
He's almost shooting 30% from three now. Remember, he was like under 5% or close to that. He's shooting 28% now.
Because he hasn't taken very many. And now down the stretch, I would argue in the last 5 games, he's taken over 10 threes. I mean, I think I would, because you saw him attempt a lot in the SEC tournament, and I feel like he's taken several more in this NIT. But guys, for Ezra, it's crazy watching his game.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I didn't realize this. He hasn't missed a three since February 25th. He hasn't missed a three.
Oh my God.
So he hasn't shot a ton. But he didn't shoot 2 threes following the Florida game on February 25th. And then in the LSU game, 1 for 1, Kentucky 2 for 2, A&M didn't shoot 1, Yale 2 for 2, Michigan 1 for 1. That's a pretty decent little stretch he's on right now.
Yeah.
And they've been big shots, like the Kentucky game that from half court or seemingly half court as times expire. It's a shot of the game.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Ezra. Like, it's crazy he even got that shot off, but he's so quick that if he gets around you, you're done. I mean, you're not catching up to him because he'll turn his back to you, and then he'll use the rim and the backboard as protection, and he'll find a way. I don't know if I've ever seen a Vanderbilt point guard play the way he does. There hasn't been many college point guards that do. I mean, in the NCAA tournament, we've seen a guy like Marquise Miller or Marquise Noel at Kansas State, and then Fairleigh Dickinson has another 5'9" kid, but Ezra, obviously, that missing piece is shooting, but he is just as good as some of those really good small point guards in the NCAA tournament. He's just not a consistent shooter, but as you said, Will, with those stats, he sort of is the last month. I mean, it's crazy. He's not now. He doesn't have the attempts, I think, to validate that, but the attempts he is putting up there, they're going in. So
I know this isn't where I expected this podcast to go, but the more I'm looking at Ezra Mignon's like stats throughout the year, the more amazing. The more maybe I don't know. The more amazing this becomes. So he hit his only other 3 of the season on November 23rd. He was 1 out of 2 for St. Mary's. He did not hit a single other 3 until February 18th against Auburn. Was his next 3 that he made.
And he didn't want to take that one either. If you remember, he stutter-stepped and was like, I don't want to shoot this guy.
And then he didn't shoot one against LSU. Something, I don't know if it was Stack said something to him or if he just had a self-realization. Something happened.
Because we talked about it.
LSU, and then he shot 3 against Florida. And then he's been consistently at least putting 1 or 2 up. He's had a couple games where he hasn't, but the confidence, I mean, that's half the battle with shooting is confidence. And when you're playing at the college level, they all have the form, right? It's not about beef. Their elbow is fine. Like, it's not about their balance. Like, a lot of it's confidence.
Yeah. And we had an entire podcast dedicated to Ezra's shooting. I forget which recap or preview it was, but we said all Vanderbilt needs is to have him maybe consistently hit that 15-foot jump shot. And guys, now he's sort of started doing that. And you can even tack on a 3 or 2 now each game. So, I mean, man, it's just, I know we do this every offseason. It's not even the offseason yet, but if Ezra and Tyrin both stay, which they most likely are, that's a pretty scary backcourt. I mean, it really, really is. And so that's what you look at, Trevor. I thought they didn't shoot the ball particularly well against Michigan. They were 6 of 23 from 3. No. From the field, they were a lot better, 43%. But I think that's what they're proving. And so many big free throws late. They were 10 of 12 from the free throw line. Guys,
Tyron 4 for 4 from the line.
Yeah, Ezra went 4 for 4.
Also,
as well.
too, I think we should note, too, talking about going back to Tyrin Lawrence.
Yeah.
He led the team in rebounds, too. He was a rebound away.
I wanted to mention that, yeah.
He was a rebound, I think a rebound away, had 9 rebounds.
1 rebound away from a double-double.
From a double-double. Like, I mean, he did it all. And yeah, I totally agree on Ezra Mannion. I think too, Will, like you said earlier about in your tweet, Jerry coaching circles around Howard. Sorry, I had taco, so I'm like trying not to burp on the mic. Yeah, literally. But I feel like too, especially during the Michigan game, there were a lot of moments to where certain rotations or certain things they ran to where Ezra Mannion was matched up on a big. Yeah. He was matched up on a 4, or he was matched up on a bigger guard and just took him to the hole every time. You would just see him come out on the perimeter, and everybody watches like, oh my God, that's a mismatch. So, I mean, kudos to them and their rotations. Yeah.
This team's really smart, guys.
Billy, we've also said it, and Trevor, a lot about Trey Thomas's playing time. And I saw a lot of tweets underneath my tweet about Jerry Stackhouse about the playing time that he received and Trey Thomas.
I would like to talk
number
about
12.
This. Yeah.
I assumed that there would be some opinions from at least one of you two guys about this.
I would like to hear what you have to think about this.
Because number 12 being on the court was like 3 separate people
by the way.
Said something underneath it. You've got to keep in mind, Stackhouse had tightened down his rotation at the end of this season. He had tightened it down, and Miles Studi and Liam Robbins were both heavily a part of it. So it's one thing to lose a very set position player like Liam Robbins because he plays the 5. Liam Robbins, if he's in the game, he's the 5. Even if QMB's in, he's probably playing a mixture of that double post 5. Miles Studi played the 2 through the 5 when Liam Robbins was out. So once he decided that he was not going to play in the tournament with his teammates and he was going to enter his name into the transfer portal early for some reason, I mean, I get it, whatever. We had our opinion on that last podcast, but also the portal's still going to be there. Like, what's it going to hurt to play 3-4 basketball games? Whatever. That's besides the point. You have to adjust something. Like, somebody has to play and take those minutes that Miles Studi was playing 25, 28 minutes a game on top of the minutes that were already distributed from Liam Robbins, who was playing 25 to 28 minutes a game. So Noah Shelby, I think, has potential to be better than Trey Thomas. I think we would all agree on that. Right now, based on the needs of this team, I don't know if Noah Shelby's an upgrade. I think you'd get the same mistakes that you're getting from Trey Thomas. It's just built into our head because he's also not been shooting fantastic lately, that Trey Thomas's mistakes like jump out in our mind. I'm not saying I'm defending it. I can understand the frustration. I'd like to see more Paul Lewis. I'd like to see more Noah Shelby, whatever it is. But right now, I don't know if Paul Lewis is probably confident as that 2 guard. And right now, anybody providing flexibility to Jerry Stackhouse is going to get minutes. And right now, Trey Thomas can play the 1 or the 2. And that is a huge asset to Jerry that he can probably swap no matter what the set play is, what offense, what they're running. He has the knowledge of how to run that from the 1 guard or the 2, because that's another thing in basketball. Point guard and 2 guard, 3 guard, depending on what offense you're running, are very different positions. I mean, you have completely different responsibilities on the offensive end, especially, but also the defensive end. So right now, I just don't think Noah Shelby and Paul Lewis have a full understanding of this offense from the 2 guard role. And I could be completely wrong. I'm not watching practice every day, but it's just the obvious, like, Why is Paul Lewis not playing the 2 guard more over Trey Thomas with how he's playing? There has to be something more to that. I'm past the point of just thinking Jerry's an idiot. Like, I think I am past that. I've gained a little more coaching respect for him ever since what he did during the Alabama game actually worked, even though it maybe have cost them a tournament berth. Like, he clearly has a feel for this team. And if Paul Lewis was comfortable in that 2 spot, I think he'd be playing over Trey Thomas, because I think everyone can see the potential Paul Lewis has. But also, I get it. It's pretty frustrating to see a guy out there that's a junior and still kind of consistently making these mistakes, is undersized, getting bullied on the defensive end. So I'm kind of in the middle. I get it. This roster's a little depleted, but Trevor, I can understand the frustration.
Do you think too, and this is something that I've been thinking about, is this is sort of how I felt about Miles Studi too, is whenever you put him out there oftentimes he could be a defensive liability. But the fact that, like, just the teeny tiny possibility that he could get hot behind the arc, do you think that translates to Trey Thomas as well? As there might be a little bit of Stackhouse that thinks, like, if he just gets hot, like if I just throw him out there and he just gets hot, that almost outweighs.
I think it negates
the negative.
It does.
I mean, it's what
look,
have you done for? Oh, go ahead, Billy.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say it from a Trey Thomas perspective. You know, he's on the floor. Say he hits back-to-back threes. That's a 9-0 run single-handedly. Now that's rare, I know, but he's done it before. I mean, Trey Thomas has done it before, not recently, but say he does that, but then later in the game you have a couple turnovers and they're huge turnovers. You know, that doesn't negate it then. But if the turnovers are in the first half, not in a big spot, and the shots are clutch down the stretch late, it's all situational. And honestly, I'm sort of with you, Will. Like, you know, Trey Thomas, when he hits a big three, it's almost like you've said before, Trevor, euphoric. It's like, okay, I have forgotten every turnover you've committed because you hit this shot that put us up by 6.
Yep.
Like, it's just, I don't know. And I think Stack is in that mold as well. Like, he's a great shooter. He's struggling right now. Shooters struggle, but against UAB tomorrow or Wednesday night, he could come back and hit three threes in a row, and Vandy controls the game. So I don't have a strong opinion either way.
The offset question is great, Trevor, and what you just said. Jerry and a coach's trust are interesting things, because I think Noah Shelby and Paul Lewis both have potential to also get hot and make a lot of threes and change the momentum of a game, but they haven't ever actually done it. Like, Trey Thomas has done it on Jerry Stackhouse's team. He's done it before in previous seasons. It has not gone great lately, but it's weird that I get in a position that I don't love the minutes that Trey Thomas is getting, because I always defend shooters. I think players that are not very good defensively but can get hot and knock down 3-4 threes in a half or in a small stretch of time is way more valuable than a couple turnovers or letting a guy drive to the basket. Like, you see it in the NBA. I mean, the NBA has a full bench of role players, and a lot of those guys are 3-point shooting specialists. You don't see defenders. That a lot. You don't see that a lot in college anymore. And I think that Jerry has more of an NBA perspective. And so he sees Trey Thomas and he's like, there's a reason the NBA values this. It's because that is a rare skill that can literally change the entire shape of a game in a minute. Because if he knocks down 3 threes, it's euphoric. I don't remember if it was Trevor or Billy that said it, but for the opposing team, it's like, oh shit,
we're dead. Like, we're done.
He hits one, or Miles Studi hits one, and it's how you define a shooter. It's like Studi and Thomas are both shooters. Tyrin Lawrence can shoot, but it's like when they hit that first one, they zoom in on Trey Thomas or when Studi was there, and you can see it in their face. Like, they're very different guys. Studi was a lot more vocal after he hit one. Trey Thomas tries to keep his face deadpan, but you can see his mouth is a little open when he's on defense. His eyes are just locked in. And shooting is such an odd thing because it translates momentum to the rest of the team. I know in practice, dude, Trey Thomas has some practices where he just cannot miss. And I know when he hits that first one in whatever game it is, the rest of that roster is like, oh yeah, finally the rim is off the basket and everyone else is going to get to see. what this guy can do. So it's
And
like we said, everybody's due. I think Trey Thomas is like the last guy due for a game.
Well, and two, like kudos to Jerry too, because even with Miles too, but now that he's not on the team, but specifically with Trey, it doesn't seem like it's a fact. He's still got the green light to shoot. So to me, it seems like Jerry and the coaching staff obviously know more than we do. And they, like you said, they've probably seen a lot of things in practice, and he's got that coach's trust to where, hey, like go out. I mean, that's what got Tyrin in trouble a little bit, is he didn't want to shoot. And so, I mean, if he's got Jerry's trust, and he clearly does, he's got the green light if he's within 35 feet of the basket, it seems like. So yeah, maybe
my last thing I'll say about Trey Thomas's shooting, last thing, because he's probably not listening. Nobody on the team is listening, but on the 0.001% chance anyone is, Trey, I just have, are you a step into shooter or are you a jump into shooter?
Honestly,
because
I think
on this cold streak, I've seen him doing both. I've seen both pieces of footwork. And one of my only quotes from my high school coach that I actually like, because I disagreed with his coaching style, was he asked, are you a step into or a jump into shooter? And his next line was, if you don't know the answer to that question, you're not a shooter. And so that's something interesting that I didn't even think about. And a lot of times when I'll mention that, like, just watch his feet next time. If he jumps, lands on 2 feet, jumps up again to shoot, or if he steps 1-2, then shoots, because I've seen a mixture from Trey. So it'll be interesting to little tidbit of shooting things on the basketball court to keep track of with Trey.
I think Trey is a really good shooter off of a ball screen, and that might surprise some people, but I've seen a lot of times with Trey, he'll kind of, I don't know how to describe it. He'll sort of slither his way off a ball screen, and he'll have that rhythm going, and he'll pull up. Like, that's what I think that's Trey's game. Now he can shoot off the catch as well, of course, but what I've realized, guys, this is going to be the Trey Thomas game. This UAB game, it has that sort of feel to it.
Oh my God. I'll combust.
There's something special. Like when you know he's a good shooter and he drills a three, there's something about it. Like, it's different when you're seeing Ezra hit a three. It's like, oh, it's just a walk in the park. Oh, Ezra hit a three, and then you see Trey hit a three. It's like, boom. It's like that's his game right there. So, guys, we're gonna get to some fan comments and questions, but anything else on Michigan? I know that was. The crowd was into it. I thought the coaching staff made so many good adjustments. Anybody else we haven't mentioned? We talked about Jordan, QMB.
He got a charge.
He did.
He took that charge. As soon as he took that charge, I thought of Billy.
Yeah, not his best game, but if there was a prop bet out every Vanderbilt game and every player had like charge QMB, charge Jordan, charge Tyrin, I'm punching that charge every time for QMB over one charge a game. I mean, he takes a charge every game, and it's always in a big spot for Vanderbilt momentum wise. So that's what I got, guys. I just think this team is morphing into what we have always thought they should be. And, it's here, and it's nice to see. It really is. So anything else on Michigan before we get to fan comments?
This is the last comment I've got, and it's about Ezra Mignon again. Okay, this is just a good example. Ezra Mignon has scored above 15 points in 7 of the last, or 15 or more points in 7 of the last 8 games. Okay, we had some he has scored 15, 6, 15, 17.
That's pretty incredible, actually.
16.
That's
18, 17.
I had no idea, and I watch every ball
I
game.
didn't either. So this is what I think we try to never be negative just for the sake of being negative. Like, you would have never heard us come on here and be so critical of this Jerry Stackhouse team 3 years ago with the roster that Jerry Stackhouse had and the talent level that we thought they had. This is why we were so angry post Alabama and early in this season, is this team had the talent the whole time. They're missing probably their best player, Liam Robbins, right now. Well, Ezra Mignon and Tyrin Lawrence just step up. All of a sudden, Ezra scoring 15 plus every single game. He's an offensive juggernaut. Tyrin scoring almost 20 a game. It's like, this is what we expected from the beginning. So
Jordan is playing defense like he's Michael Jordan.
So when we didn't see it, we were
like,
so like, what the hell is going on? The talent is here. These dudes are ball players. And for whatever reason, it's just not coming together. And when you have the talent on the roster and it's not coming together, the thing you blame is coaching. And right now, this team is finally gelled together.
And I want to mention this too, guys, before we get to fan comments and questions. Credit to Liam Robbins. I know we haven't been talking about him because he hasn't been playing, but the fact that that kid is still with the program, he's sticking with the culture, he's cheering on his teammates, he's the loudest guy on the bench, that has helped this team. You know, because they see he's committed to the program, that makes everybody else want to join him, want to join the bus. So Liam Robbins he's changed this program for the better. And I don't know that, you know, we knew we were going to say that before he got here as he announced his transfer decision, but what a kid, man. I mean, what a guy. I can't say enough good things about Liam. I've heard a lot of great things about him. He could be, you know, getting therapy, training for the NBA, whatever right now, saying, guys, good luck, but I got my NBA career to worry about. No, he's worried about this team and these guys. So I can't say enough about Liam Robbins, and I know y'all completely agree. So salute to Liam. I wish we were talking about you.
Very glad you said that, Billy.
Yeah, I had to throw it out there because I think it's easy to forget about him right now, you know, because he's not playing, he's not on the floor. But at the moment I saw a video from a local reporter of him scooting around in his scooter at Bridgestone, just having fun. He's still positive. A lot of guys, this would crush him, man, and I'm sure it has, but he hasn't let it affect the team and his morale. So credit to Liam, man. He's a hell of a kid. He's got a bright future still. So hopefully, you know, he's able to have his NBA career that he wants. But we got a lot of comments and questions, guys. Let's start with Luke. Talk about how we've won several one-possession games this season. Usually teams that overachieve in that area regress the following season. How can the team make sure that doesn't happen? Well, number one, I'll get to that second part later, but that's so true. This team has won a lot of tight games where last year they just didn't go their way. I mean, you saw a lot of maybe not low scoring, but tight games late where Vanderbilt just couldn't pull them out. This year, they've pulled them out. They have found a way to win late so many times. I mean, on the road at Rupp Arena, against Kentucky at Bridgestone. You could say on the road at Rupp again. So you've seen it so many times. How can they make sure it doesn't happen? Close games? I don't know if they can. That's their DNA, guys. Kind of getting into the mud late. It's close. I feel like every game is the same, weirdly enough. I know there's outliers where Vanderbilt, you know, they've dominated LSU at Bridgestone and, you know, they dominated a couple other teams here and there, but, you know, they have played with the opponent and they've just kept it tight and they're comfortable late. They're comfortable when it's close in a tie game with 2 minutes left. They love that. So I don't know how to answer how can they make sure it doesn't happen, but man, they have won a lot of one-possession games, and that tells you the growth of the program.
These questions sometimes are a little too good, Billy, because one of the things like bookmarked in my mind during the dog days of summer, I like to get these little things in my head. One of the stats was talking about, I can't remember it, I don't have it written down, but one of the stats was talking about teams that have a low scoring margin and win a lot of one-possession games. Typically either like go neutral or regress. Yeah. My comeback to that would just be they had a lot of close games two seasons ago. And like you said, they just didn't break Vanderbilt's way. I think some of that is luck. I mean, some of it, like the ball just isn't going to go in, but I think
they've gotten lucky this year.
80-90% of it, in my opinion, is just their talent is better now. Their depth is better now. So late in game, when these opposing teams are in foul trouble, whatever it is, Vanderbilt actually has the guys that Stack wants to have on the court. And they're not just wearing down late. They're not losing leads late. You've seen a lot of things happen, like in this Michigan game where Vanderbilt was down. And it's the old, did the other team fall apart, or did Vanderbilt perfectly execute their end of game strategy over and over and over? Earlier in the season, I would have said that Vanderbilt's just getting lucky. Now it's getting past the point of being a fluke. It's really getting past that point. Clearly, at the end of the game, this team is very well prepared. I'm not saying that Jerry Stackhouse is the greatest coach on the planet, or he's great at rotations, or, you know, giving guys the correct amount of minutes or whatever, but just X's and O's late game scenario offense or defense, Jerry seems to be a step ahead of his opponents. And so I always tend to lean towards the opposing team blew it whenever you have that debate. But the amount of times it's happened, the variations in which it has happened, and Vanderbilt consistently coming out on top under Jerry Stackhouse, it's hard to just say it's luck. I mean, I think the talent is just improving. Next season is just so huge. Like you said, how do you prevent that next season? I mean, I just think that the talent gets better, gets more gelled together, and you're not down by 4 at the end of the game. You're up by 4 next season, and you execute at the same level and you win by 11 because you were +7 in the last 2 minutes of the game, just like they've been consistently doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you win by that double-digit margin versus now this season you're winning on a last-second jumper. So I don't think there's an easy answer to how do you avoid them. I think that Jerry and this roster have done a great job of executing better this season, and hopefully next year with better talent that's been together, or a majority of this roster's been together in the offseason, they could just beat the shit out of some teams. Because I know this podcast is just ready for some fun dubs in basketball. Like, I feel like that has just been missing. Clark Lee gave us the gift of getting that back a little bit this year in football. I think a lot of Vanderbilt fans forgot what it was like to beat the shit out of a lesser opponent like they did Hawaii to open up that seat. That was, you want to talk about something that was like exultation. That was just, I mean, it was like a religious
demons were exercised.
Oh, watch it. That you felt it on that Vanderbilt sideline during the Hawaii game. And every Vanderbilt fan felt it. That
was a spiritual experience.
And I'm relating that back to basketball is I hope next season can be that for this Vanderbilt team. I hope that next year we are sitting here going into the NCAA tournament discussing what seed we think Vanderbilt is going to be getting, not whether or not this team makes the tournament. I think that will be a religious experience for Vanderbilt basketball fans, is you're discussing whether this team should be a 6
7
or an 8. Versus you're saying, are they going to make the first 4? That would be such a stepping stone.
That'll be weird,
Jerry, to get this program back to where it was. And I don't even know how I'd feel about it. I've kind of forgotten what that feels like, because even late in the Stallings era, I mean, they were sneaking in the tournament. So and there's a lot of pressure. And I hate to start saying that now while this season's still going on, but there is a lot of pressure on next season with this roster and with Stack going into year 5.
Yeah. I think with the close games, maybe to put a positive spin on it, not even looking towards next year, and this might carry over to next year, because I think there are going to be some transfers. I'm not even going to say that's on Jerry or the coaching staff. That's just the way college athletics is now. Kids are going to transfer. It sucks. It is what it is. Just let the rough end drag. But I think as right now, I think this team sort of, and I think basketball more than, and we've talked about this, basketball more than any other sport is such a momentum sport. And this team just sort of has that juice right now to where if they do find themselves down, or they do find themselves in a close ball game, they've got those games that they can look back on. They're like, you don't really stress it as much. You're like, oh, we've been here, we've done that before, and we've done it against really good teams. They've done it against a Tennessee, they've done it against a Kentucky, they've done it against X, Y, and Z. So to put a positive spin on it for this season and what they have coming in Memorial Gym on Wednesday, I think that's something that can sort of comfort this team, that if they do find themselves in a sticky situation, they're like, okay, we've done it 10 times so far. And then going into next season, if let's say they find themselves against another really good Alabama team, and it's coming down to the wire, a team that is practically back is like, hey, been there, done that. You know what I mean? So
it's so funny. That is exactly what, Trevor, this is exactly what, you weren't even on the podcast at this point. This is exactly what me and Billy said after the NIU game. And Vanderbilt
Yep.
came back in that game. And we said that is such a big stepping stone, saying we've been there before. We've been down in a bad situation. And we don't just have a coach telling us, hey, we can win this. We as a group have what it
it's
takes
not
to
just
beat
like,
this
hey,
team.
I believe. It's like,
It's not
hey,
just coach speak.
look.
It's like,
Yeah.
look, we've done this and we can
Yeah.
do it again. So I love that positive spin. And also it's like, dude, good teams, like it's just the tier of team you're playing the close games against. Like
Yeah.
every good team you can look at there, a good team versus a meh team this season that was like a 10 seed. It's just winning the close games consistently. I mean, that is the difference between being seeded as a 3 seed and being seeded as a 10 seed is the 3 seed won the close games and the 10 seed dropped them.
And I keep pointing back to that Tennessee game at home. I mean, that was sort of the first stepping stone of this team can win a close game, not just win a close game, but beat a really good team who, oh, by the way, is in the Sweet 16 now at home on their home floor. They can beat them. So I think it all goes back to that Tennessee game and that shot from Tyrin Lawrence. So again, we go back to Tyrin Lawrence and everything that's changed with him. I have another good comment from Jeff Stokes. He said, I'm just glad that since I had baseball tickets, I was able to watch the end of the basketball game. Kudos to Candace Lee for not making things complicated. Kudos to the entire athletic department. What a move. Trevor, you called it. I mean, I think they were listening to the episode and said, we need to make,
I think they might have.
We need to make a change here because they literally made that like a few hours after we released the episode. And I know they probably didn't listen to us, but I think, that's something to look forward to with this administration because they seem to be doing more of those moves, making those smart decisions that are logical. Yeah, let's push back the time of the baseball game because we've got fans that want to go to the basketball game. And I don't think ESPN was involved in that. That was Vanderbilt administration, Tim Corbin, credit to Corbin, and even the Ole Miss head coach as well. You hear Vandy
shout out
United.
to Ole Miss. I don't screw those guys, but hey, thanks for being willing to participate.
Yeah, thanks for letting Vandy fans go to Memorial and then walk over to the Hawk later. But yeah. Jeff, that's a great comment. And Trevor, you spoke it into existence. I mean, it's hilarious.
Shout out to Candace. Shout out to Tommy McClellan. Shout out to Chancellor Deermeyer, Corbin. I mean, I don't imagine this was easy. They had to go up against the worldwide leader in sports and be like, hey, we want you to change broadcasting. So, man, shout out to those guys because I said this on Twitter and I saw a couple people also say this too. I love David Williams. I think David Williams was a great AD. I think he was screwed that he got paired up with Nick Zeppo, somebody who did not care about athletics whatsoever. I think if he had somebody like Deermeyer, Vanderbilt will be light years ahead of where they are now. But man, shout out to Candace Lee. Shout out to those guys shout out to the brass for actually doing something like this and doing some fan service that, I mean, it probably was difficult.
Yeah.
And in previous, I think Candace I'm a Candace stan. I think she gets a lot of unnecessary heat. Yeah. Are some things bad ideas? Yeah, it's trial and run. There's trial and error, but let's not forget that in our lifetime, Vanderbilt had a chancellor that literally wanted to dismember Vanderbilt athletics and Gordon Gee. He wanted to get rid of Vanderbilt sports. He wanted to dismember everything and just make it an academic institution. Guys, this was less than 20 years ago to where Vanderbilt athletics was oh shoot, we literally might not play sports ever again. We are not that far from having somebody like that who was calling the shots at Vanderbilt. So it's gonna take a while before you see these big improvements. I know people are a little upset with the timeline of Vandy United, but Jesus Christ, guys, at least they're breaking ground already. You can watch the construction cam. It's actually happening. I'm not able to sit in my seats at football this year because they're actually putting in real-time effort. And so, man, I love this administration. Shout out to those guys. It's been awesome. And even something as small as this is just a huge fan service. And so
this is the exact
it might not
thing
be
we always
a lot, but
about.
I appreciate it.
This is the exact thing, Billy, we always talked about. Obviously, the Candace Story Lee and getting the Vandy United and actually redoing the stadium and locker rooms, all that's huge stuff that seemed 10, 15 years ago, and especially, Trevor, you said 20, 30 years ago, a dream. Like that just wasn't going to
Pipe
happen.
dream.
Yeah, a real pipe dream. Like, yeah, Vanderbilt needs a football stadium, complete gutting it, redoing it, basically building a new one. And 5 years ago, Vanderbilt fans almost said that like laughingly, like, like that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And now it's ground is broken. My seats aren't there. And so,
yeah, my seats are gone, guys.
Shovels
like
in the ground.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But it's the David Williams. We've had this take. We've gone on these rants. Dog days of summer. We'll have plenty of time to go into it. David Williams was a good man. He was faced tough circumstances. But what Candace Story-Lee has done during her short tenure as AD is pretty incredible. And it's the little things like this that won't cost the university money. That doesn't take months of preparation. That doesn't take city approval or planning. That's a small little thing that is positive and will leave a positive impression to your diehard fans
who show the
ones
fans that you care.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That was extra effort that was unnecessary on the administration's part, and they put in the extra effort because fans and diehards wanted it, and they did it, and that's impressive to me, even though I didn't care.
And Tommy McClellan tweeted about it. He said this was a tough decision. Credit to everyone involved who made this move possible. There were a lot of people involved in this. All it took was a call from Candace. Hey, Coach Corbin, can we move your first pitch time back a couple hours? Hey, let's get to Coach Bianco. Let's get to Stackhouse, making sure this is okay. Let's let the fans know ahead of time. And I'm not saying it was easy, but it took some simple moves by Vanderbilt, and they got it done. So
it's one of those things that like fans think is just like, we just moved the first pitch, but there's a lot more to it with coordinating all of it.
Yeah,
the travel.
There's a lot. Yeah,
but it is like there's a lot more to it than just moving a middle school or high school game, obviously. But also,
like Ole
it really
Miss
is,
probably had to figure out travel.
But also,
buses.
Once again, this is just proving what fans at Vanderbilt have always said. It is a little more complicated, but at the end of the day, it really is that simple. It really is just having people in place that care and are listening and are in tune with the fan base. And it's like Vanderbilt fans are getting out of an abusive relationship for years. And you're seeing just what a normal, healthy relationship is like. And it's like Candace Story-Lee has done incredible, phenomenal things, but she's like trying to make up for 50 years of just a decrepit administration. So she's fighting an uphill battle, but damn, she's battling. She's doing a hell of a job. I've been critical of her, but man.
Even like a small thing, like I think it was this past football season, you made a tweet about like the parking lot or something like that. Literally the next day, Vanderbilt administration, she sends out a mass email and says, hey, yeah, we hear your complaints. We're going to address this. It's small stuff like that it might not be small. Like there probably were like a lot of strings to pull, but like something like that can just mean like so much to a fan base who for decades has gotten the middle finger from the guys in Kirkland.
And later that day, right before kickoff, I think it was that Ole Miss game, she's out on the golf cart, like making sure parking spots are open and everything's going well. Like she's trying, and give credit to her. And a lot of things are working now because of that.
Yeah.
So that's another conversation for some of the dog days. I'm sure we'll get to that. Vandy Sports Takes asks, from the huge number of transfer portal guys that have received interest from Vandy, is there anyone particularly intriguing other than the obvious dude from Temple? And I think he's talking about Damian Dunn, Temple transfer, averaged 15 points a game last couple of years, 6'5" guard from Kinston, North Carolina, right where Jerry Stackhouse is from. He dropped 38 points on Vandy earlier this season. He also played for Stack's AAU team. So again, those are all, I'm throwing, rumors out there, but I think that's a guy to watch. As he mentioned there, Elijah Fisher from Texas Tech. He's Trey Thomas's cousin, 6'6" combo guard. He'd be a great fit. Another guy is Ziggy Reed. He's a transfer from Merrimack College, who is a Division I team now. Excuse me, guys. Somebody take over.
You good, Billy? I don't know what's going on, but Billy's coughing up a lung over here.
I'm good.
Billy's coughing. I'm burping. It's just a wild ride right now.
Another guy, Talon Cooper from Minnesota. So those are just a few names. I don't know if you guys have any other names that have floated out there, but Damian Dunn and Elijah Fisher are a couple guys that I would keep an eye on just to answer that question.
You said Fisher. You said he's Trey Thomas's cousin, right?
Yep. Yeah. So
how was Trey Thomas like 5'11" and then his cousin's like what is he, like 6'4", 6'5"?
Yeah, he's like 6'5".
I always do this is a perfect time to remind people. If you saw Trey Thomas walking downtown Nashville, no one would think he's short. I just want to point that out to people.
Yeah.
This is something I like to always say, like 1 out of every 5-6 episodes during basketball season, at least. People don't have a concept of how tall basketball players are at the Division I level or at any level, but specifically the D1 level. Football players are huge. And when you see them, it's like, wow. Basketball players are a different level of wow, of how huge, because Trey Thomas is like 5'11". He's maybe like an inch shorter than me, half an inch. And I'm 6 feet tall and have never been called short. But on the court, I would look like I was 5'3". Like that's how I would look if I was standing on Vanderbilt's court playing next to guys that are 6'6", 6'7".
Like I'll never forget the moment I was up next to Brad Tinsley in person. On TV, I always thought I'm like he's so small. And then literally like I go up to shake his hand and I'm like looking up at him. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, he is huge.
Yeah, it's like seeing one of those small cornerbacks that are like 6 foot 185, and they're like,
I've been lied to my whole life.
He's got to put on some weight, and you like see them in person, and they look like absolute freaks. Like they look like Adonises, and you're like, that's the skinny guy on the football field. Like
this is the guy who needs to put weight on.
Yeah, the real guy for me was Luke Cornett, because on the court, like when you're watching on TV, it's like, yeah, he's tall. He's tall, but I got to go like right behind the basket after a game, and he walked, near me. I'm like, oh my God.
I saw Luke Cornett and Damian Jones walking next to each other at a Vanderbilt football game, and they just stuck out above everyone. It was two of them. And then the other point when I had that realization,
I saw Jeff Taylor and Lance Goldburn at the Vandy Presbyterian game in 2012, and like you were literally like, they definitely hoop.
When I met Will Purdue, he was at one of the Vanderbilt football games, and I shook his hand. And I can
his
not great, but if it's an okay basketball, I can palm it. And my hand fit in his palm. I was like a baby.
It's like a
child.
toddler hand.
I was like a toddler I was like, oh my God, like this is just this isn't even a human being. This is like a different level of being.
But yeah, Trey Thomas's cousin Elijah Fisher is a guy to watch. Other than that, there hasn't been a ton of buzz for any other guys. Let's keep it rolling. Southern Boys Sports Vanderbilt. This is a good one. With the announcement that Q and Ezra are coming back along with Colin Smith and Tyrin Lawrence, what are the chances of Jordan Wright returning and running it back for one more shot at the NCAA tournament for him? That's a good question.
I would love it. I would love nothing more, but I don't know.
I would say it doesn't feel great right now for Jordan's chances. I don't know why I'm saying that.
I think I feel the same way.
But and I point back to after the Kentucky game, and I know we look back at that. Yeah, it's an emotional moment between him and Stackhouse. But part of me was like, man, he's like ripping Jordan right now. Like he was not playing. He was not, performing up to his capabilities. And he has down the stretch here. I guess I might point to that, but I don't know. I mean, that's the question we all want to know.
The only reason I'm up in the air about Jordan more than anything is the injuries. Is I think he's like, they don't have to release as much information as they do in pro sports about college athletes, and especially basketball. You're just kind of going off what the head coach says.
And especially Vanderbilt University in every sport.
And what you observe on the court during the games. But clearly he's got something going on with his lower back. Yeah. And that's something that can wear on you, because it's not really something that gets better. It's something that you just maintain the rest of your athletic career.
And he's an older guy.
Yeah. And so for him, I think the decision might be he's probably not an NBA guy. Seems very smart. They talk about it.
Might be a help.
Every single broadcast, they like to bring up that he wants to be a general manager in pro sports, and he did an internship with the Nashville Motor Speedway or whatever this summer to learn about sports management. It's what the ESPN puts in front of every commentator. But he seems like a smart guy, and he's got plans that aren't playing in the NBA afterwards. And I think he has an actual decision that's not just do I want to play basketball or not? He's got the decision of like, do I want to put myself through 100% I'm going to be injured at some point this upcoming season? Do I want to take that risk or just call it a career and open up that spot for somebody younger? So I'm like up in the air, man. I'm a coin flip on Jordan. I think I'm positive. I think I'm leaning towards him returning if he hasn't made an announcement yet. I think if he was leaving, he would have said something. I could be wrong.
If he announces that, what a breath of fresh air that'll be. I think a lot of Vandy fans
I would love
relieved.
for him to come back, man.
That's we talk about Tyrin and Ezra coming back and what a lethal duo that would be. But you throw Jordan in the mix there, whew. I mean,
like, what a great just ambassador for Vanderbilt basketball. Like, I mean, dude's been put through the ringer his career at Vanderbilt. Like, and he's stuck it out and he's put his nose to the grindstone. And that's like one thing that's why I loved watching Jeff Taylor so much, is because like sometimes like his offense would sort of sputter, but Jesus, man, he was still going to give you his all on defense and he was going to lock up whoever you put in front of him. And there's something about a guy like that who's got that like old school mentality. He's like, put me on whoever and I'll lock him up. That like just really resonates with me, and I'm sure like the rest of the fan base. So I would love for him to come back, man.
What an announcement that would be. And Will, I think that's a good point. You know, the fact that he hasn't made an announcement yet, you know, he's waiting on this season to finish and maybe he comes back. But if he doesn't, I don't think it's the end of the world. I mean, obviously you want to see him back. But I think, like you said, well, this is more of a personal decision for him, you know, with probably a lot of his health involved as well. We got one more to get to here. Then we'll talk a little bit about UAB. Then we'll wrap this thing up. Mark McNulty, see you guys at Martin's on Ellison Place Wednesday pregame. It's an early tip, so I don't think I'll be at Martin's before the game. Trevor, I don't know about you or Will. But,
I don't think I'm bringing my mother. So my mother is going to come to her first Vandy basketball game since I was born. So
wow.
And she gets off work late. So we will be in the gym probably 45 minutes before first tip. So I will make my rounds.
If it was an 8:00 tip time, maybe.
If it was an 8:00 tip time, dude, I'm in there, baby.
Yeah, from the bottom of my heart, I wish, but there's just no way that I'm going to make it downtown in time for a 6:00 tip and have time to do anything besides be late to the basketball game if I decide to stop into a restaurant. So I'm just trying to make it on time to the game. That's my big concern.
Make it to tip. And I say that to you, Mark, as well. I think Mark said he's going to be there at 3:00. So,
Mark, we got work, brother.
That's the type of fan we want.
I'm gonna be fighting for my life in Excel at 3:00. I'm not gonna be it.
Mark's just gonna be enjoying barbecue and beer at 3:00.
I love it.
Hey,
man.
Mark, wear your socks, baby.
That's all we need from you. But represent in there, Mark. We love it. All right, let's finish it off here. UAB at Memorial Gym, 6:00 tip off. ESPN2. It's a whiteout inside Memorial, as you can see in Will and I's background here. So many good whiteout games. Vandy has done the whiteout against Tennessee traditionally. I think we've seen it at other games, but this should be one of the better whiteouts we've seen.
Memphis.
Vandy, yep. Oh, that wasn't a great finish there, but
gotta finish what you started, baby.
Vandy hasn't played UAB since 1997, so it's a rare occurrence. Vandy even meeting this team. UAB beat Morehead State by 18. They handled them on Sunday. Birmingham, like I said, guys, short drive up to Nashville up I-65. I would expect a large contingent of UAB green in Nashville. UAB is coached by Andy Kennedy, former Ole Miss head coach, third year at UAB. He's done a phenomenal job. If you guys remember, he was an SEC Network studio analyst for a couple of years before landing at UAB. They won the conference tournament last year. They lost a tough one in the final to FAU this year. They could be a tournament team. If they beat FAU, that's another bid stealer. That was a bid stealer that we were watching. We were watching that game to make sure UAB loses, so Vanderbilt maybe has a chance to the tournament, but turns out they weren't even close, so it didn't matter. But Andy Kennedy is the head coach. Player to watch, Jelly Walker. That's his name, Jordan Jelly Walker. He averages 23 points a game. He shoots nearly 40% from three. So we've got a legitimate player coming into Memorial on Wednesday. So guys, I mean, I don't personally know a whole lot about UAB. I know they're well coached. They've got a great point guard in Jelly Walker. But for me, guys, it's about the crowd and it's about this moment for Vanderbilt. It's the final chance to watch the team that revived Memorial Magic inside the historic Memorial Gym. There's no other place to be. And if Vandy wins, they'll play the winner of Cincinnati or Utah Valley next Tuesday in Las Vegas, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Central. That's the game right after Vandy and UAB. But guys, again, I don't know a whole lot about UAB, but for Vanderbilt, you got to come ready to play because this UAB team is going to be well coached. They're going to be ready. They're going to have a lot of their home fans behind them. So I'm excited. I mean, I know it's an NIT game, but it's going to be fun to see the crowd, the atmosphere one more time inside Memorial. So for me, Will, it's keep doing what you've been doing. I mean, you don't need to change anything right now if you're Vanderbilt. And I'm going to say an X factor here is that the game's close late, because Vanderbilt has won every game seemingly that's close late. So I think it'll be a phenomenal atmosphere. It should be a great game. And for Vanderbilt, it's almost like the tough matchup for them is out of the way with Michigan. Well, I mean, we talked about that. Vanderbilt and Michigan being the two best teams, most talented teams left. Now you've got a UAB team. If you win, you play the winner of Utah Valley and Cincinnati. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but this matchup is the one that they lost this time last year at Xavier. So this is it, Will. I mean, can they get it done? Can they get to Vegas? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't care, and I'll get into this, but UAB ranked 57th in the net to close out the season, I believe, and Michigan was 61st. So they're actually, this UAB team is ranked higher in the net. We've discussed all of this about the net. UAB is definitely the third best team that Vanderbilt will be facing. I don't care what the efficiency stats necessarily say. This UAB team is a Ken Palm golden child. I mean, both their offense and defense, I believe, are in like the top 64 in their efficiency rankings of all the teams in the country, 43rd on offense, 64th on defense ranked in the country. You got ahead of me there a little bit. Jelly Walker was the only guy that had even knew anything about, but the only stat that was really interesting, he ranks 9th in the country in percent of shots taken for his team. He takes 34.2% of UAB's shots. So you said it. There is one key player for UAB, and Ezra Mignon is going to be guarding him. So my evaluation of this game, if they beat that Michigan team that was probably, not an exaggeration, the worst possible matchup for where this Vanderbilt team sits right now, I'm very confident against this UAB team that doesn't have a great record against actually good opponents. They've beaten FAU, I think, once this season. They've split with North Texas or went 1-2. I mean, they've cleaned up on this record of 27-9 against shitty Conference USA teams. They're one of those teams we'll see. They could give Vanderbilt a run, but I'm feeling confident, which probably means it's not a good sign for Vanderbilt. Trevor, are you positive? Are you negative? How are we feeling?
Oh, did Trevor, did you hear him? Oh, is he thinking?
I did.
He's thinking.
I totally
see that
agree.
brain working.
I totally agree with Will. The matchup of the game is Ezra on Jelly. I think of Ezra, great defensive player. Now that Liam is no longer playing ball, probably you can make the argument the best defensive player on the team behind, or not behind, but right there with Jordan. If he can lock down Jelly, I feel really confident. UAB does have some Power 6 basketball experience. They have some transfers on their team. Javion Davis, I don't know why my Siri keeps doing this. Javion Davis, he's a forward guard, previously at Alabama and Mississippi State. KJ Buffin, Ole Miss guy, Andy Katz, and then
Kennedy,
Seton Hall. Who did I say?
Katz.
Andy Katz. Andy Katz doesn't coach basketball, sorry. Basketball guy, but doesn't coach. Jordan Walker, Seton Hall, and then Harry Jemison, who is their only senior listed on the roster, coming in at 6'11". Next tallest guy is going to be a guard at 6'9". So I don't know if size is going to be that much. They're probably gonna, from what I read about them, they play relatively small, lot of guards, sort of like to play a little bit more fast paced. Not sure how that's going to stack up against QMB. I think if Vanderbilt can keep QMB in the game and he's going up against a lesser talented big, that might pose an advantage for Vanderbilt, be able to get some more rebounds off the defensive and offensive glass. The big thing, though, is going to be Ezra versus Jelly. If Ezra can win that matchup, I think Vanderbilt wins because Tyron's going to get his. Tyron's going to get his. Tyron's going to put up numbers. It is what it is. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Ezra versus Jelly, that's my matchup.
What a matchup of names there. Ezra Mannion versus Jelly Walker. I mean,
Filet mignon against PB&J, man.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait. It's fun to have a guy like a Jelly Walker coming to Memorial too. I mean, you know, we were hyping up Brandon Miller coming to Memorial, and he dropped his. It's always fun when you're facing a guy with that name, Jelly Walker, but also a guy that's legit. I mean, he's averaging 23 a game, 40% from three. You cannot let him get loose because if he's able to get his, then Vanderbilt, you've got to match that offensively. So Ezra Mannion, I agree, Trev. Ezra, it's on you. I don't like saying that, but it's almost like that's the matchup to watch within the game.
Gotta let the dog off the leash, man.
That's the individual one. Trevor, you brought it up. They do like to play faster. I always like finding the tempo stat on KenPom because it will always kind of tell you, will this be a battle of how these teams want to play and how the flow of the game both coaches want it to go. And when you see a matchup of this, which is the complete opposite, UAB is 37th in the country in average possession length on offense at 16.2 seconds per offensive possession. They're 207th in the country in defensive average possession length. Vanderbilt is 282nd in the country in offensive possession length and 71st in the country in defensive possession length. So Vanderbilt likes to speed up the opponent and slow it down on the offensive end. UAB is the opposite. They like to slow down the opponent a little bit and like to speed it up once they get the ball. So you have two contrasting styles, two point guards playing at very high levels, and two teams coming from completely different types of conferences. You have UAB with the incredible record coming out of Conference USA, and you have Vanderbilt coming out of an SEC conference that, at least in the first couple rounds, proved out to be pretty underrated overall in the NCAA tournament and NIT. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, not just with the individual guys, but just the styles of these teams are very different. And Vanderbilt jumping out early and controlling that tempo is going to be a pretty big key.
And Vandy's battle tested, guys. I mean, you know, this is a game that I don't know if I would say doesn't concern them, because every team at this point in the season, you know, you've got things to be worried about if you're Coach Stackhouse. But I mean, I don't see how they don't have full confidence in their guys going. You're home again, chance to go to Vegas. Everything's in front of you. There's no other option. The boats are burning right now, Trev. I mean, this team, this is it for them. I mean, this is it, and there's no other motivation for that. So I'll leave you with this, Trev. What's your little message here? I know the volume might be down a little bit here, but what's your little message here to any Vandy fan still debating whether they should head over to Memorial Wednesday night?
31 years ago today, my mother and father got married. Today is my mom and dad's 31st anniversary. My dad, his first date he took my mom on was a Vanderbilt basketball game. Wednesday, my mother will be in attendance at Memorial Gymnasium for her first Vanderbilt basketball game since I was born. I'll be there, my mother will be there, and of course my father will be there. I texted my mom today. I said, "Hey mom, it's a whiteout. Don't worry. I got a white Vandy shirt for you. You ain't got to worry. We're going to be there." I will not be sitting in 2L because my mother would like to get a seat back. And so I made a compromise with her. I was like, "Mom, you come to the game, we'll get seat backs." We are not sitting in 2L. You can take the boy out of 2L, but you cannot take the 2L out of the boy. We are going to be sitting in Section F. For those of you who don't know, Section F is behind the UAB bench. Section F is where UAB fans will be sitting. I saw I saw some UAB people on Vanderbilt's Twitter asking, they're like, "Oh, do we not get an allotment?" And someone tweeted at him and said, "Hey, most opposing fans like to sit behind the bench in section F. If you're coming from Birmingham, I'm going to be in section F with you. Don't show up. I'm going to be in your seats behind your bench for 40 minutes in hell. It's not going to be you and little Timmy and your mom. I'm going to be there right beside you. And I am an absolute Memorial maniac. If you are a UAB fan and you listen to this or you see this, I'm telling you, get a refund on your tickets. Don't come, because I'm going to be sitting in your section. If you need an excuse or a reason to come to the last ball game at Memorial Gymnasium of the 2022-2023 season, then I don't know what to tell you. This is the team, as Billy said, that has brought back Memorial Magic. We've been banging our heads on the table like Memorial Magic is dead, but we have seen it time and time again, and you have one more opportunity to experience Memorial Magic in the flesh. And by God, if my mother can come to her first Vanderbilt basketball game in 26 years, then there is no excuse that anybody who is listening to this should not be there. Will Shibig on Twitter in our spaces said that he had $100 in his bank account, but he was going to go to a Vanderbilt basketball game. You have no excuse. Get your tickets, get to Memorial, get loud, get crazy. This is the last one of the season we have. All roads lead to Vegas, baby.
Those poor UAB fans. Oh my!
Hey.
Little do they know the amount of violence that will be caused.
Guys, if you were a Blazer, I'm not going to sit down. If you tell me to sit down, I'll look at you in your face and say no. Do not come to the ball game. Do not sit in F. I will be behind your bench giving them hell for 40 minutes. When they trot off to their locker room, I strategically bought my seats to where I can lean over the rail and yell at your players as they go to the locker room and tell them how much they suck and tell them how Ezra Filet Mignon is absolutely killing Jelly Walker. Do not come to Memorial. Cancel your tickets. Stay in Birmingham. The state of Alabama sucks. You're going to do nothing for the local economy. Don't show up. It's already a ball game. Vandy wins. Stay home. All roads lead to Vegas.
I was going to tell a story after this about sitting in that same section behind the opponent's bench and having Mississippi Valley Delta or State Delta Devils head coach at the time, former NBA player Lindsey Hunter, having a verbal altercation during the game with Lindsey Hunter from Section F, and his assistant coach was having to pull him away, which is why I was going to say my dad will no longer sit in Section F with me, because I actually had the opponent's head coach arguing
Section
with me
F is forbidden.
Their starting point guard from that game, by the way, still follows me. Where I got him was I was yelling about the play he was drawing up, and his players were agreeing with me and laughing behind him. And I've never seen a coach actively lose control of his team because of me. Granted, there will hopefully be a few more people, so maybe the coach won't be able to hear you for UAB.
No,
but Trevor, that's the expectation. Why I tell that story is I have the expectation of looking at UAB's bench and seeing their head coach being just absolutely berated by a beautiful mustachioed man and him breaking. I want you to break him, Trevor. And if there's
at the UAB bench and look 9 rows up, and you're going to see me, and I'm going to be piss and vinegar. This Andy Kennedy, you're in hell, baby. Get right with God, because you're not right with me.
Hey, where you get him, Trevor, we used to do this at Tennessee Tech all the time because there weren't a lot of crowds. You get the coach by early on getting the end of the bench players laughing at the comments you're making. So if you are funny at the beginning, you get the end of the bench guys, and the coach will like kind of notice it, but will ignore it. And that's when you slowly break him throughout the game. So Trevor, you're the guy, you're the man, you're the perfect man for this job. And I know you can do it.
This game is on your shoulders, Trev.
It's all on you, Trevor. It's not on Ezra. It's on you.
It's
Rest
all
in
on
piss,
you.
UAB. Y'all are dead. Y'all are dead. And then you think you're going to get safe when you go to the opposite end of the court. Little do you know, a bunch of goons in 2L will be waiting for you, bleeding out of their eyes, bloodlust waiting to be quenched. You're dead. You're dead. You go to them, you think, oh my God, we can get away from 2L, and you come right back to me, baby. You come right back to me.
UAB, if you're any of you guys are listening, I pray for you guys heading up to Nashville. That'll do it for Trevor Hulan and Will Byrum. We'll see y'all at Memorial Wednesday night. Vanderbilt and UAB, 6 o'clock tip-off. Stay tuned. You've been listening to another episode of The Door Report, powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors.